My name is Marguerite, and I am 54 years old. For 27 years, I built a life with one man. I gave him everything: my youth, my career, my dreams. And when he stood in our living room, face red with anger, demanding I return everything he ever gave me and our children, I felt my heart shatter. But 1 week later, boxes appeared on his doorstep. When he opened them, he discovered a truth he never expected. Before I share what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt unseen in your own home, because this story might just change how you see your own worth. Let me take you back to where it all began. I met Douglas when I was 24 years old, fresh out of nursing school with a diploma in my hand and hope in my heart. He was 26 then, a young sales representative with nothing but ambition and a charming smile. We met at a friend's barbecue in the summer of 1997. He spilled lemonade on my dress and spent the rest of the afternoon apologizing so earnestly that I ended up giving him my phone number just to make him stop. Those early days were simple. Douglas drove a beat-up Honda Civic that made strange noises every time he turned left. I rented a tiny apartment with a roommate who snored louder than a freight train. We would go on dates to diners where we could afford to split a burger and fries, and we would talk for hours about the future we wanted to build together. He told me he wanted a house with a big backyard. I told him I wanted children who would fill that backyard with laughter. We made promises under streetlights and sealed them with kisses that tasted like possibility. Our wedding was small, 32 guests in a little church on Oak Street. I sewed my own wedding dress because we could not afford anything from a bridal shop. My mother cried when she saw me walk down the aisle. Douglas cried too, though he would never admit it. We honeymooned at a cabin 3 hours away because that was all we could afford. And I remember thinking as I fell asleep in his arms that first night, as his wife, that I was the luckiest woman in the world. The first years of our marriage were a beautiful struggle. Douglas worked long hours trying to climb the corporate ladder. I worked night shifts at the hospital, coming home at 6 in the morning, just as he was leaving for work. We would pass each other like ships, but we always made time for a kiss at the door. Always made time to say I love you. When Tyler was born, everything changed. Suddenly, there was this tiny human who depended on us for everything. I remember holding him in the hospital, looking at his perfect little face and feeling a love so overwhelming it took my breath away. Douglas stood beside me, tears streaming down his cheeks, whispering that we had created a miracle. But miracles require sacrifice. Someone had to be home with Tyler, and Douglas was being considered for a promotion. So when my supervisor offered me the position of nursing manager, I said no. I said no because Tyler needed me, because Douglas needed me to hold down the fort while he chased his dreams. I told myself it was temporary, just until things settled down. Things never settled down. 3 years later, Natalie arrived. My sweet girl, with her father's eyes and my stubborn streak. She was born premature, spending 2 weeks in the NICU, while I sat beside her incubator praying and crying and bargaining with God. Douglas visited when he could, but he had just been promoted to regional sales lead. There were meetings he could not miss, clients he could not disappoint. I understood. I always understood. When Natalie was 5, she developed severe asthma. There were nights I sat up with her, holding her through attacks that left her gasping for air. There were emergency room visits at 3 in the morning, ambulance rides with sirens screaming. During one particularly bad episode, I called Douglas, who was at a conference in Chicago. He said he would try to get an early flight home. He did not make it back until 2 days later. I quit my job that year. Natalie needed constant monitoring, and the night shifts were destroying my health. Douglas was making good money by then, so we could afford it. At least that is what he told me. What he did not know was that I used my own savings to cover the gaps. The savings I had built up since I was 18 years old. The money I had put aside for emergencies. When the economy crashed in 2008, Douglas lost his job. For 3 years, he searched for work while I picked up part-time shifts at a clinic whenever Natalie was stable enough. I paid for groceries. I paid for utilities. I paid for Tyler's first year of college tuition from a secret account I had been feeding for years. Douglas never knew. He was too proud to ask where the money came from, and I was too protective of his ego to tell him. When he finally landed a new job better than before, he acted like those 3 years had never happened. Like he had always been the provider. Like the house had run itself while he was figuring things out. I let him believe it. I thought that was what good wives did. Over the years, I noticed changes in Douglas, small ones at first. The way he started referring to everything as mine instead of ours. My house, my car, my money. The way he would come home and talk about his achievements without asking about my day. The way he stopped saying thank you when I ironed his shirts or packed his lunches. I remember the exact moment I realized something had fundamentally shifted. It was Tyler's graduation from college. Douglas gave a toast at the dinner we hosted, talking about how proud he was, how all his hard work had paid off, how he had sacrificed so much to give his children opportunities. He did not mention me once, Tyler noticed. After dinner, he pulled me aside and said, "Mom, you know, you are the one who made all this possible, right?" I smiled and told him not to worry about it. But that night, I cried in the shower where no one could hear me. Douglas started working later, started traveling more, started caring less about family dinners and birthday parties and anniversary dates. Our 25th wedding anniversary came and went with nothing but a text message saying he was stuck in a meeting. I had made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first date. I canceled them and ate leftover pasta alone. I told myself every marriage had rough patches. I told myself we would find our way back to each other. I told myself that 27 years of love could not just disappear. I was wrong. The signs were there. I just did not want to see them. It started in September of last year. Douglas began coming home later than usual, always with excuses about quarterly reviews and client emergencies. His phone, which used to sit face up on the kitchen counter, started living face down in his pocket. When I asked to use it once because mine was charging, he hesitated before handing it over. He had changed his password. I asked him about it casually. He snapped at me, saying I was being paranoid, that a man was entitled to privacy, that after 27 years of marriage I should trust him. So I tried to trust him. But then there were other things. Douglas had never been particularly interested in his appearance. He was the kind of man who wore the same style of khakis for 2 decades without complaint. Suddenly, he was joining a gym, buying new clothes, wearing cologne I had never smelled before, something musky and expensive that lingered in the bathroom after he left for work. One night, he talked in his sleep. I lay beside him staring at the ceiling, unable to drift off because of the weight on my chest. And then I heard it. A name whispered softly. Pamela. My blood turned to ice. I lay there perfectly still, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake him. He murmured something else I could not make out, then rolled over and continued sleeping peacefully. I did not sleep at all that night. October brought the truth I had been dreading. Douglas had gone out to pick up takeout for dinner, something he had started doing regularly, always insisting on going alone. He forgot his phone on the kitchen table. I was washing dishes when I heard it buzz, and then buzz again, and again. 3 messages in rapid succession. I told myself not to look. I told myself to respect his privacy. But my hands moved on their own, reaching for the phone. It had just restarted after an update, so there was no password lock yet. The messages were from someone named Pamela, with a heart emoji next to her name in his contacts. I miss you so much. Can we meet next week? That hotel in Grand Rapids was perfect. Let us go back. I cannot stop thinking about last night. My legs gave out. I sank to the kitchen floor, the phone clutched in my shaking hands. I opened the message thread and scrolled. There were hundreds of messages, photos, reservations for hotels and restaurants, and weekend getaways. This had been going on for 2 years. 2 years of lies and secrets and betrayal. Pamela was 36 years old, 18 years younger than me. She worked in Douglas's company, a junior marketing coordinator. He had been her mentor. Now he was her lover. There were pictures of them together, at restaurants, at the beach, in a hotel room where she was wearing a necklace I had never seen. A necklace that must have cost hundreds of dollars. A necklace bought with money from our joint account. I heard his car pull into the driveway. I did not move. I sat there on the cold kitchen floor, surrounded by the wreckage of everything I thought I knew. When Douglas walked in carrying bags of Chinese food, he found me holding his phone. His face went pale. "What are you doing?" I looked up at him. This man I had loved for 27 years. This man I had sacrificed everything for. This man who had been living a double life while I washed his clothes and cooked his meals and kept his home. Who is Pamela? He tried to deny it at first. Said she was just a colleague. Said I was misunderstanding innocent work texts. But I read him the messages out loud, one by one. His denials crumbled with each word, and then like a cornered animal he attacked. "This is your fault," he said. His voice was cold, a stranger's voice. "You let yourself go. You stopped being the woman I married. You became boring, predictable. I deserve to be happy." I stared at him, unable to form words. This man who had watched me sacrifice my career for his, who had watched me raise his children while he climbed corporate ladders, who had been absent for every crisis and taken credit for every success. This man was blaming me for his infidelity. "I want a divorce," he said, "and I am keeping the house. My money paid for it." He walked past me, grabbed a suitcase from the closet, and started packing. Within an hour he was gone, moving in with Pamela, I assumed. The Chinese food sat untouched on the counter, growing cold. I sat in the darkness of my kitchen until dawn broke through the windows. The days that followed were a blur of pain and paperwork. Douglas hired a lawyer immediately, an expensive one from downtown who sent a thick envelope of divorce papers to our house within a week. He wanted the house sold and proceeds split. He wanted to keep his retirement account separate. He wanted the cars, the boat he had bought 2 summers ago, the vacation timeshare. He wanted everything. More than that, he wanted me to know I was getting nothing I deserved. Through his lawyer, he sent a message that stung worse than any legal document. "Marguerite contributed nothing of value to this marriage. She is not entitled to assets acquired through my professional achievements." I read those words over and over until they stopped making sense. Nothing of value. 27 years of love and sacrifice and devotion reduced to nothing of value. I called Tyler first. He was on a plane from Seattle within 24 hours, arriving at my doorstep with red-rimmed eyes and barely contained rage. "I will kill him," he said, pacing my living room. "I swear to God, Mom." "No," I told him. "That is not what I need from you." "What do you need?" "I need you to know that this is not your fault. None of this is your fault." Natalie called from her university, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She wanted to drop everything and come home. I told her to stay to focus on her studies. She had her whole future ahead of her. "How can I focus when our family is falling apart?" she asked. I did not have an answer. Douglas tried to contact the children, spinning his version of events. He told Tyler that I had been emotionally unavailable for years. He told Natalie that sometimes marriages just end. He painted himself as the victim of a loveless union forced to find comfort elsewhere. Tyler did not buy it. After one phone call with his father, he refused to speak to him again. Natalie was more conflicted. She had always been a daddy's girl, always seeking Douglas's approval. She tried to maintain relationships with both of us, calling me in tears after every conversation with her father. I could hear the confusion in her voice, the desperate desire to understand how the man she idolized could do something so terrible. I never bad-mouthed Douglas to our children. I told them the truth when they asked, but I did not poison them against him. They would make their own judgments in time. Douglas's sister Brenda called me a week after he left. She had always been cordial to me, though never warm. We exchanged Christmas cards and occasional small talk at family gatherings, nothing more. Marguerite, she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of someone delivering news they think is reasonable. I know this is difficult, but you need to accept reality. Douglas has been unhappy for years. You should sign the papers and move on with dignity. Dignity. She wanted me to accept scraps and call it dignity. Your brother cheated on me for 2 years, I said quietly. Marriages are complicated. Maybe if you had paid more attention to him, this would not have happened. I hung up without responding. There was nothing left to say to someone who could excuse betrayal so easily. The meeting at the lawyer's office was worse than I had imagined. We sat across a polished conference table, Douglas on one side, with his expensive lawyer, me on the other, with Sandra Whitmore, the attorney Gloria had recommended. Sandra was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had handled hundreds of divorces and told me straight away that Douglas's demands were excessive. But that did not stop him from making them. Douglas's lawyer read from a list like he was ordering from a menu: the house, the vehicles, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio, the vacation property. All assets acquired during the marriage were purchased with funds earned by my client, he said smoothly. Mrs. Marguerite worked part-time in a modest position and contributed minimally to the household finances. I sat there listening to my life being reduced to balance sheets and percentages. Minimally. They kept using that word like it was a scalpel cutting away everything I had done. Then Douglas spoke. He had been silent until that point, sitting back with his arms crossed, looking at me with an expression I did not recognize. Something between contempt and triumph. You know what he said, leaning forward? I want it all back. Everything I ever gave you. Everything I gave the kids. Every penny I spent on this family for 27 years. You want a divorce? Fine. But you are going to return everything I ever gave you. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, trying to calm him down, but Douglas shook him off. You think you are entitled to anything? He continued, his voice rising. You were a nurse, Marguerite. A nurse. You made nothing compared to me. I built this life. I paid for this family. And now you want half. You should be thanking me for the roof over your head. I felt Sandra shift beside me, ready to object, but I held up my hand slightly. Let him finish. So return it, Douglas said, standing now, jabbing his finger in my direction. Return everything I ever gave you and those kids. Every cent. Every gift. Every single thing. Then we will see what you have left. He stormed out of the room, his lawyer hurrying after him with apologies. Sandra turned to me, her face unreadable. Are you okay? I was not okay. I was shattered. But somewhere beneath the pain, a spark had ignited. Return everything he gave me. Fine. I would show him exactly what that meant. Gloria picked me up outside the building. She took one look at my face and pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop, refusing to drive until I told her everything. When I finished recounting the meeting, she was furious. She ranted about the injustice, about the arrogance, about the sheer audacity of a man who thought he could erase his wife's contributions with a checkbook. What are you going to do? She asked finally. I looked out the window at the gray sky, at the bare trees lining the street, at the ordinary world carrying on while mine fell apart. I am going to give him exactly what he asked for, I said. Gloria frowned. What do you mean? He wants everything he gave me returned, so I am going to return it. All of it. On the drive home, the plan began to take shape. That night, I could not sleep. I sat in the small home office Douglas had rarely used, surrounded by filing cabinets full of our life together. Tax returns, bank statements, medical records, school enrollment forms, a 27-year paper trail of every decision, every sacrifice, every moment that had built this family. Douglas thought he knew what he had given. He thought it could be measured in dollars and purchases and mortgage payments and tuition checks. He thought contribution meant income. He had no idea. I pulled out the first folder. Financial records from 1998. Our first year of marriage. My starting salary as a nurse, $32,000 a year. Douglas's starting salary in sales, $28,000. I had actually earned more than him in the beginning. I had never thrown that in his face, not once. Folder after folder, year after year. I built a spreadsheet documenting every paycheck I had ever earned, every contribution I had made to our joint accounts. Every time I had dipped into my personal savings to cover a gap Douglas did not even know existed. The numbers told a story he had never bothered to read. My total earnings, over 27 years of marriage, $842,000. Not as much as Douglas, certainly, but hardly the nothing he claimed. The money I had spent during his 3 years of unemployment, $41,600, from my personal savings covering mortgage payments, utilities, groceries, and Tyler's first year of college. The tuition contributions I had made for both children, $63,000 quietly withdrawn from accounts Douglas never monitored. The down payment on our first house, $15,000 from the inheritance my grandmother had left me. I was not the dependent leech Douglas had painted in that conference room. I was a partner who had contributed more than he had ever acknowledged. But financial records were only part of what I gathered. I found the letters Douglas had written me when we were young. Before email and texting made romance instantaneous, he had sent handwritten notes, love letters on lined paper filled with promises and dreams. "I will never let money come between us," he had written in 1997. "As long as we have each other, we have everything. You gave me the greatest gift when you gave me Tyler," he wrote after our son's birth. "I promise to be worthy of the family you are building." I read through every letter, watching Douglas transform from a hopeful young man into the bitter stranger who had screamed at me across a conference table. The contrast was devastating. Next, I gathered evidence of everything I had sacrificed. The letter from St. Mary's Hospital in 2001 offering me the position of a nursing supervisor. I had declined in writing explaining that my family needed me. Douglas had never even known about that offer. Medical records from Natalie's childhood documenting every hospitalization, every specialist visit, every emergency room trip. I had been listed as the primary contact on every single form. Douglas's name appeared nowhere except as the insurance policyholder. A calendar I had kept during Natalie's worst year when she was 5. I had marked every sleepless night, every emergency inhaler use, every time Douglas was supposed to be there and was not. The pages were filled with my handwriting and empty of his presence. Pay stubs from the clinic where I worked part-time during his unemployment. Proof that I had held this family together while he rebuilt his career. Then I gathered the things that would hurt him most. The Father's Day cards Tyler and Natalie had made when they were young. Handmade cards with crayon drawings and misspelled words. Cards Douglas had glanced at and set aside, eventually throwing them away. I had rescued them from the trash, keeping them in a shoebox in the closet. He had never noticed. A drawing Natalie had made when she was 6. Our family portrayed in a child's honest perspective. I was large and central, holding Natalie's hand. Tyler stood beside me. And Douglas. He was tiny, a stick figure in the corner of the page, barely visible. "Daddy is always at work," Natalie had explained when she showed it to me. "So I made him small because we do not see him very much." I had never shown Douglas that drawing. Now I would. Videos I had saved on an old camcorder. Natalie's piano recital at age 8. She had practiced for months, so proud to perform for her parents. I was in the audience filming. Douglas was supposed to be there. He had promised. He never showed up, texting later that a client meeting ran long. The video showed Natalie scanning the crowd mid-performance, her face falling when she could not find her father. She finished the piece with tears in her eyes. I had comforted her afterward, made excuses for Douglas, told her Daddy was so sorry he missed it. Now Douglas would watch that video and see what he had truly missed. Finally, I placed 2 items in the last box. My wedding ring. The simple gold band Douglas had given me 27 years ago. It was not expensive. We could not afford much back then, but it had meant everything to me. And a letter. I sat at the desk until 3 in the morning, writing and rewriting, trying to find the right words. I did not want to sound angry. I did not want to sound bitter. I wanted to sound like exactly what I was, a woman who had finally opened her eyes. Douglas, I wrote, you asked me to return everything you ever gave me and our children. So here it is. Every financial record showing what I actually contributed. Every letter you wrote when you still knew what love meant. Every piece of evidence that I was the one holding this family together while you were building your career. Every card our children made that you threw away. Every memory you missed because work was more important. And this ring, which used to mean a promise. Look at what you gave us, Douglas. Really look. And then tell me again that I contributed nothing. I am not returning these things because you deserve them. I am returning them because you need to see the truth. You asked what you gave us. Here is your answer. You gave us your absence. You gave us your ego. You gave us broken promises and empty chairs at dinner tables. That is what you gave. And now you can have it all back. I signed my name and sealed the envelope. Gloria came over the next morning to help me pack. 5 boxes each, carefully labeled. Are you sure about this? She asked. I have never been more sure of anything. On December 20th, exactly 1 week after the conference room confrontation, I arranged for a delivery service to place the boxes on the doorstep of the apartment Douglas now shared with Pamela. After the delivery confirmation arrived, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea. The house was quiet. The Christmas decorations I had started putting up before everything fell apart still hung on the walls, a strange contrast to the emptiness I felt. But it was not entirely emptiness. There was something else there, too. Something that felt almost like peace. My phone rang at 7 that evening. Douglas's number. I picked up. His voice was shaking. Not with anger this time. With something else. Marguerite, what did you send me? Exactly what you asked for. Everything you gave me and the children. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, what is all this? The truth. I said, take your time reading it. I hung up. I learned later what happened when Douglas opened those boxes. Brenda told me weeks afterward when she called to apologize. She had been there that evening, stopping by the apartment to check on her brother. She watched him unpack each box while Pamela hovered nearby, curious at first, then increasingly uncomfortable. The first box contained the financial records. Douglas spread the spreadsheets across his kitchen table, scanning the numbers with growing disbelief. This cannot be right, he kept saying. She did not make this much. She was just a part-time nurse. But the documents did not lie. Bank statements, tax returns, pay stubs, 27 years of contributions he had never bothered to count. She paid for Tyler's first year of college, he said almost to himself. I did not know that. What else did you not know? Pamela asked. Her voice had an edge to it. The second box silenced the room. Douglas pulled out the letters one by one, his own handwriting younger and more hopeful, making promises he had systematically broken over 3 decades. Pamela read over his shoulder, and Brenda said she could see the younger woman's expression change with each letter. I will never let money come between us. Pamela read aloud. As long as we have each other. Douglas said nothing. You wrote these to her, Pamela continued. Do you write things like this to me? Still nothing. The third box was harder to dismiss. Medical records, calendars, evidence of every emergency Douglas had missed, every crisis he had delegated to someone else. The rejection letter for my promotion, sacrificing my career advancement so he could pursue his. You never told me she turned down a supervisor position for you? Brenda said. Douglas stared at the letter like he was seeing it for the first time, because he was. The fourth box broke something in him. The Father's Day cards, the birthday drawings, the handmade gifts their children had created with so much love, gifts Douglas had discarded without a second thought. He held Tyler's crayon drawing of a family fishing trip, a trip Douglas had promised but never delivered. And then he found Natalie's picture, the family portrait where he was a tiny figure in the corner, barely visible. Brenda said Douglas sat down heavily when he saw it all, the color draining from his face. She drew me the swall, he whispered, because she never saw me. Pamela had stopped looking at the boxes by this point. She was looking at Douglas with new eyes, calculating eyes. You told me your wife neglected you, she said. You told me she did not appreciate you. But this, she gestured at the evidence spread across the table. This looks like you were the one who disappeared. Douglas did not argue. Brenda said Pamela left shortly after that. Not permanently, not yet, but something had cracked between them. The fantasy Douglas had sold her, the story of a lonely man trapped in a loveless marriage, was crumbling under the weight of documentation. The fifth box was open last. Douglas reached inside and found my wedding ring, the simple gold band that had meant everything 27 years ago. He held it in his palm, staring at it. Then he opened my letter. Brenda said he read it 3 times. She said tears ran down his face by the second reading, but she was not sure if they were tears of regret or self-pity. With Douglas, it was hard to tell. When he finished, he sat in silence for a long time. What did it say? Brenda asked. Douglas handed her the letter. She read it. And for the first time in her life, Brenda said she saw her brother not as the successful man he presented to the world, but as the hollow person he had become. Oh, Douglas, she said, what have you done? He did not have an answer. The next few days brought a reckoning Douglas had not anticipated. Pamela started asking questions, hard questions. If he had minimized and dismissed his wife of 27 years, what would stop him from doing the same to her? If he could forget the sacrifices of the mother of his children, how reliable were his promises about their future? They fought. Brenda said she could hear them through the walls when she visited. Pamela demanding reassurance Douglas could not provide. Douglas growing defensive, then angry, then silent. The foundation of their relationship had been Douglas's narrative, the story of a man who deserved more than his ungrateful wife could give. Now that narrative had been exposed as fiction. Brenda called me 3 days after the boxes arrived. Marguerite, she said. Her voice was different, smaller. I owe you an apology. I waited. I believed him. All these years I believed what Douglas told me about your marriage. That you did not support him. That you held him back. That he was the one carrying the family. She paused. I should have known better. I should have asked questions. Why are you telling me this? Because I saw what was in those boxes. I saw the evidence. And I realized I had been unfair to you for decades. You deserved better from me. You deserved better from all of us. I thanked her for calling. I did not tell her it was okay because it was not, but I accepted her apology. Then she said something that surprised me. Douglas is falling apart. Pamela is pulling away. He is starting to realize what he lost. I think he is going to call you. I did not respond. Whatever you decide to do, Brenda continued, whatever you choose, I want you to know that I understand now. You were never the problem. He was. After I hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about those words. Douglas was falling apart, but a larger part of me felt something else entirely. Freedom. Douglas called 2 days later. I was making breakfast when his name appeared on my phone. I let it ring twice, then answered. His voice was barely recognizable, thin, exhausted, stripped of all the bluster and arrogance I had grown accustomed to. Marguerite, can we talk? In person, I considered refusing. I had every right to refuse. But something told me this conversation needed to happen not for him, but for me. The cafe on Bridge Street, I said. Tomorrow at 2. I arrived early, chose a table near the window where Gloria could keep an eye on me from a booth across the room. She had insisted on coming, worried about what Douglas might do or say. I did not think he would cause a scene, but I appreciated her presence. Douglas walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. His clothes were rumpled. He had not shaved. The confident stride that used to announce his entrance to every room was gone, replaced by something hesitant and uncertain. He sat across from me without ordering anything. Thank you for meeting me, he said. I nodded. I went through everything in those boxes, several times. Douglas's hands rested on the table, and I noticed they were trembling slightly. I did not know about any of it. The money you spent during my unemployment, the promotion you turned down, the college tuition you covered. You never asked, I said simply. He flinched. No, I did not. Silence stretched between us. Why did you never tell me? He asked. Would you have listened? He had no answer for that. Douglas took a deep breath. I was wrong. At the lawyer's office, saying you contributed nothing, demanding you return everything. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something genuine in his eyes. I was angry and scared, and I lashed out. But that does not excuse it. Nothing excuses it. I waited. Can we start over? He asked. His voice cracked on the words. Can we try to rebuild what we had? I looked at this man I had loved since I was 24 years old. This man who had held me when Tyler was born and cried when Natalie took her first steps. This man who had written beautiful letters full of promises and then broken every single one. No, I said. His face crumpled. I continued before he could speak. Not because of the boxes, Douglas. Not because of Pamela. Not because of any single thing you did, but because you never saw me. Not really. You saw someone who supported your dreams, someone who kept your house running, someone who raised your children while you built your career. But you never saw Marguerite, the person, the partner, the woman who gave up her own ambition so you could chase yours. Marguerite, please. I held up my hand. I am not finished. He fell silent. For 27 years, I told myself that love meant sacrifice, that being a good wife meant putting your needs first, always. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that I deserved to have my own needs too. I forgot that partnership is not one person giving everything while the other takes. Tears were running down Douglas's face now. I do not know if they were for me or for himself. I am not angry anymore, I said. I was for a while. But those boxes helped me see something clearly. I gave you everything I had, Douglas. Everything. And you never even noticed. That is not something I can rebuild from. That is not a foundation. That is a void. What about the kids? He asked desperately. We can try for them. Our children are adults. They will make their own choices about their relationship with you. I am not going to influence that either way. But they are not a reason for me to stay in a marriage that made me invisible. I stood up. The divorce will go forward. Sandra will contact your lawyer about fair asset division. I am not trying to take everything from you, Douglas. I never was. I just want what is rightfully mine after 27 years. That is it. His voice was hollow. That is it. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. One more thing. The ring is yours. Keep it or throw it away. I do not care. But the letters you wrote when we were young, keep those too. Maybe they will remind you of the man you used to be. The man who believed love was more important than money. Maybe that man is still in there somewhere. I left him sitting alone in the cafe. Gloria met me outside. She did not ask how it went. She just put her arm around my shoulders as we walked to her car. How do you feel? She asked finally. I thought about it carefully before answering. Like myself, I said. For the first time in years, I feel like myself. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Sandra was worth every penny of her fee. With the documentation I had gathered, the evidence of my financial and non-financial contributions to the marriage, the division was fair. I kept the house, buying out Douglas's share with the money from the settlement. He kept his retirement accounts, but I received a portion adjusted for the years I had sacrificed career advancement. Pamela and Douglas did not last. Brenda told me they split up about 2 months after the boxes arrived. The foundation of their affair, the lie that Douglas was an underappreciated husband, trapped in a loveless marriage, could not survive the truth. Pamela moved on quickly. Douglas, I heard, did not. He tried to rebuild relationships with Tyler and Natalie. Tyler remained distant, polite, but cold when they spoke, which was rarely. Natalie gave him more chances, but she had set firm boundaries. No more excuses for missed events. No more pretending the past did not happen. She would have a relationship with her father on her own terms or not at all. Douglas sent me a letter about a month after the divorce was final. A real letter, handwritten like the ones he used to write decades ago. I read it once, then put it away. He apologized. He expressed regret. He said he finally understood what he had lost. Maybe he meant it. Maybe it was just another performance. I did not spend much energy trying to figure out which. I wrote back a single line. I hope you find peace, Douglas. I know I have. The months after the divorce were strange. Good strange, mostly. I returned to nursing full-time for the first time in over 20 years. The hospital was happy to have me back, and this time when they offered me a management position, I said yes. I became the nursing supervisor for the pediatric ward, caring for children like Natalie, had been children who needed someone watching over them with fierce attention. I joined a yoga class at the community center. I was terrible at it, initially stiff and self-conscious among women half my age. But I kept going, and slowly my body remembered how to move without carrying the weight of someone else's expectations. I started painting. Nothing fancy, just watercolors at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings, landscapes mostly, flowers, the view from my newly repainted porch. I was not particularly talented, but I loved the quiet focus of it, the way the colors bled together, creating something that did not exist before I put brush to paper. Tyler called every week from Seattle. Our conversations were longer now, deeper. He told me about his work, his friend's a woman he had started dating. He asked about my life, genuinely curious in a way he had not been, when there was always tension beneath the surface of our family. Natalie came home once a month. We would cook dinner together the way we used to before she left for college, before everything got complicated. She was thriving in her graduate program, studying to become a therapist specializing in family dynamics. The irony was not lost on either of us. You know, she said one evening, stirring a pot of soup while I chopped vegetables, "What you did with those boxes taught me more about boundaries than any textbook." Is that a good thing? She smiled. It is the best thing. You showed me that loving someone does not mean erasing yourself, that you can honor what you gave without accepting being diminished. I did not know how to respond, so I just pulled her into a hug and held her for a long time. My relationship with Brenda surprisingly became something real. We met for lunch occasionally, two women who had been on opposite sides of a story, finally comparing notes. She apologized repeatedly, and eventually I told her to stop. The past was past. What mattered was what came next. She told me Douglas was struggling, living alone now in a small apartment, working the same job but with less enthusiasm. He had started seeing a therapist, she said, trying to understand why he had destroyed the life he claimed to want. Do you feel bad for him? Brenda asked me once. I thought about it honestly. A little, I admitted. He is the father of my children. Part of me will always care about his well-being, but I do not feel responsible for him anymore. That is the difference. One evening, almost exactly a year after those boxes appeared on Douglas's doorstep, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. The house was quiet, mine now in every sense. I had redecorated it completely, erasing the traces of a marriage that no longer defined me. New furniture, new colors, new energy. I thought about Douglas's demand that day in the conference room. Return everything I ever gave you and the kids. He had meant it as an insult, a way to diminish everything I was. Instead, it had become my liberation. By gathering the evidence, by forcing him to see the truth of our 27 years together, I had also forced myself to see it. I had seen my own value clearly, perhaps for the first time ever. I had seen that contribution is not measured only in paychecks, that sacrifice is not nothing just because it is quiet, that love given freely does not disappear just because someone refuses to acknowledge it. I did not regret those 27 years. They gave me Tyler and Natalie. They gave me moments of genuine happiness, even if they were overshadowed by what came later. They taught me who I was, and more importantly, who I did not want to be. But I did not mourn them either. The future stretched ahead of me, unknown and unwritten. For the first time in decades, I was not building it around someone else's dreams. I was building it around my own. And that was worth more than Douglas could ever have given me. If you are watching this, and you have ever felt invisible in your own life, if someone has ever made you feel like your contributions do not matter, if you have ever been told that your sacrifices were worthless, I want you to know something. Your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to see it. Your value does not depend on being acknowledged. The love you give, the work you do, the dreams you defer, they all count. Even when no one is keeping score, even when the person who should appreciate you most takes it all for granted. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is hold up a mirror and show someone exactly what they are looking at. Sometimes returning what was given is the only way to prove you had something valuable all along. Douglas asked for everything back. I gave it to him. And in doing so, I got myself back too. That is the real gift. Not the ring, not the letters, not the spreadsheets or the calendars or the children's drawings. The gift was remembering that I mattered, that I always had, and so do you. So if you have made it this far, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a relationship where your contributions were overlooked? Have you ever had to prove your worth to someone who should have seen it all along? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes writing it down is the first step to taking it back. If this story touched you, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. And share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Someone who is feeling invisible. Someone who needs to remember that their value is not up for debate. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, whatever you have given, whatever you have sacrificed, it was never nothing. It was everything. And you deserve to know that.